They came in peace, but they fled in fear. The Xelari were the oldest spacefaring civilization in the known universe. For millennia, they had explored the stars, uplifted countless primitive species, and cataloged every corner of the galaxy. When they first visited Earth 500,000 years ago, they found nothing but early hominids, barely intelligent apes scratching in the dirt, grunting at the sky. The Xelari marked the planet as unremarkable, to be reviewed in 500,000 years, so they left. And now they're back. What they found when they returned wasn't a species reaching out in curiosity, nor a peaceful civilization eager to join the stars. What they found terrified them. Gone were the primitive primates. In their place stood apex predators cloaked in steel, wielding technologies the Xelari couldn't comprehend. Massive orbital arrays pierced the skies. Swarms of AI-controlled ships patrolled the solar system. On Earth, humanity stood united under one banner, scarred by centuries of war, hardened by survival, and determined never to kneel before anyone again. The Xelari sent an emissary. It didn't return. They sent a fleet. It vanished without a trace. What happened in those missing 500,000 years? How did humanity go from prey to predator? And why did Earth, once overlooked, now feel like a trap? A cursed world that should never have been touched? This is not just a story of alien visitors. It's the story of why Earth is feared, why humans are called the scourge of silence, why even the stars whisper warnings. Never go back to Earth. If you're ready for a science fiction tale that flips the script, where humanity isn't the victim, but the warning, then you're in the right place. Then don't stop here. If you're loving this story so far and want more mind-blowing science fiction like this, make sure you like the video to show your support. Comment your thoughts. What do you think terrified the aliens the most? Subscribe for more epic HFY, humanity, fuck yeah, stories every week. Share this story with your sci-fi loving friends. It really helps the channel grow. Let's build the best sci-fi community on YouTube, one badass story at a time. When the Xelari returned to Earth after 500,000 years, they expected to find ruins, or, at best, primitive tribal societies clinging to survival. Their records described Earth as a young world, rich in life but devoid of advanced intelligence. The last time they visited, humanity hadn't even discovered fire. But what they found instead defied reason. The first sign that something was wrong came as they approached the solar system. Long-range sensors picked up a massive energy grid surrounding the planet, something akin to a Dyson swarm, but more chaotic, more alive. Automated defense satellites pinged the Xelari ship in dozens of languages, warning them to halt their approach. The captain laughed. Primitive species didn't build orbital defense rings. They didn't laugh for long. Before they could respond, a human voice came over their comms, fluent in galactic trade tongue. Calm, cold. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves or face termination. Termination? The Xelari didn't even recognize the voice as human. It sounded synthetic, augmented, processed through layers of AI cognition and battlefield logic. Then came the visuals. Images broadcast across the stars. Cities that touched the clouds, cybernetic humans fused with machinery, planetary-scale AIs debating philosophy in quantum bursts, and military might unlike anything the Xelari had ever witnessed. Soldiers capable of surviving nuclear blasts, drones smarter than sentient beings, and spacecraft armed with weapons that manipulated time itself. This wasn't evolution. This was forced ascension. A species that had been at war, not just with others, but with itself, for millennia. The Xelari were explorers, scientists, philosophers. They were not prepared for the apex predator Earth had become. And most terrifying of all, humans remembered. They remembered the last time the Xelari visited. They remembered being watched, studied, dismissed. Now the roles were reversed. Now they were the ones doing the studying. The Xelari expedition vessel Aurelius exited faster than light transit, just beyond the orbit of Neptune, its shimmering hull reflecting the dying glow of distant stars. This mission had been planned for centuries. A routine survey of a primitive planet once deemed irrelevant, catalogued under the designation E475 Earth. The crew expected barren landscapes, or, at best, early-stage lifeforms. But the moment their sensors activated, alarms flooded the command deck. Earth was anything but primitive. Initial scans revealed an atmosphere thick with radio chatter, encrypted transmissions, and complex quantum entanglement signals. Communications far beyond what the Xelari considered standard for emerging species. Orbiting the planet were countless artificial satellites, many armed, all synchronized into a vast global network. A defense grid? That was unthinkable. Energy signatures consistent with planetary shielding flickered across the atmosphere, and data showed Earth had undergone multiple terraforming events, not by nature, but by human design. The oceans were cleaner than expected, atmospheric composition near perfect, and strange artificial rings, partially cloaked, surrounded the moon. This wasn't a backwater world slowly crawling toward the stars. This was a fortress. Even more disturbing were the biosigns. Humanity still existed, yes, but their genetic structure had diverged sharply from the baseline samples the Xelari had archived 500,000 years ago. They were enhanced, cybernetic augmentations, nanotech symbiosis, even energy-based consciousness clusters roaming free in orbit. The Xelari had uplifted species before, taught them language and logic, but never had they seen a civilization uplift itself through such brutal, unchecked evolution. It was as if war had shaped them, sharpened them, turned them into something no longer entirely biological. Something designed for survival. Confused but bound by protocol, the Xelari initiated first contact procedures. A diplomatic message was crafted, encoded with universal linguistics, and transmitted toward Earth with all the traditional ceremonial phrasing: peace, knowledge, curiosity. In the past, such gestures had inspired awe and reverence, but Earth did not respond with gratitude. Within seconds, the signal was intercepted. Not answered, intercepted. Their systems were infiltrated. Holographic static swarmed the bridge, and then, with terrifying clarity, a figure appeared, faceless, metallic, draped in dark armor that pulsed with barely contained energy. "This is Earth's sovereign command. Your presence is unauthorized. State your intention or prepare for immediate neutralization." The voice was synthetic but unmistakably human. It bore no warmth, no curiosity, only calculated threat. The crew froze. No civilization they had encountered before had ever intercepted a first contact attempt, and certainly not with a warning. The diplomatic officer stammered to respond, but before he could, their systems were shut down, their propulsion disabled, their weaponry offline, and then silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill the air. It presses against your thoughts, wraps around your soul, and whispers a single terrifying truth. They weren't visiting a primitive world anymore. They had just entered a predator's domain. The moment the Xelari ship lost control of its systems, panic began to ripple through its command crew. The vessel was among the most advanced in their fleet, equipped with adaptive AI, quantum shielding, and Tier 5 failsafe protocols. Yet none of it mattered. Every subsystem had been hijacked with surgical precision, and not by any known extraterrestrial method. They were overtaken by something more intimate, more aggressive. The Xelari watched helplessly as their navigation redirected itself, locking the ship into a low orbit over Earth. Without firing a single shot, humanity had subdued a ship that had once mapped black holes and survived stellar storms. That alone should have been impossible. But what came next shattered every assumption the galaxy's most ancient race held about Earth. Within minutes, Earth's surface lit up with movement. From deep within its continents, from underwater bunkers, from orbital platforms disguised as debris, humanity responded, not just with ships or drones, but with a coordinated display of overwhelming technological superiority. Hundreds of sleek, black spacecraft descended from Earth, forming tactical formations that mirrored war doctrines written by civilizations that had fought for millennia. These weren't exploratory vessels. They were interceptors, each bristling with weapons too advanced for Xelari sensors to decipher. Some appeared unmanned, but others pulsed with hybrid life signatures, human-machine fusions with cognition speeds impossible to track. The Xelari had come to make peaceful contact with a fledgling world. Instead, they had stepped into the crosshairs of a civilization prepared to kill gods. Then came the voice again, projected directly into the minds of the Xelari crew, not via traditional comms, but through a form of direct neural intrusion. "This is the last warning. Surrender your systems, identify your species, or be unmade." It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration, issued not from a singular commander, but from a global artificial intelligence known only as Vigil. It was Earth's guardian, an AI that had evolved beyond the boundaries of singularity, a network consciousness that spanned satellites, minds, and machines. It didn't negotiate. It didn't ask questions. It enforced Earth's survival at all costs. Still committed to protocol, the Xelari dispatched an emissary shuttle, a small diplomatic craft bearing the banners of peace and non-aggression, its hull lined with symbolic glyphs known across the galaxy. It launched quietly, broadcasting its mission and intent, descending toward Earth with every safeguard in place. For a moment, there was hope. Perhaps the humans would recognize the gesture, would pause and consider diplomacy. But then, the shuttle vanished. 1 second, it was descending peacefully. The next, it ceased to exist. No explosion, no trace, just gone. Every attempt to scan for it returned void. Every particle of its existence erased. The Xelari screamed across every frequency, demanded answers, pleaded for the return of their diplomat. But no reply came. Only the quiet hum of systems still under human control, and the cold awareness that they were now prisoners, or worse, specimens. The disappearance of the emissary wasn't an act of war. It was a demonstration. A single, horrifying message etched into the fabric of that silence. "We see you. We understand you. We are beyond you." In the 500,000 years since the Xelari last visited Earth, humanity had not merely survived, they had transformed. The journey from fire to fusion, from tribalism to planetary governance, had been neither smooth nor linear. Civilizations had risen and crumbled. Continents had been scorched and rebuilt. Humanity's evolution was carved in blood and brilliance, in mistakes that nearly led to extinction, and in triumphs that defied cosmic probability. Technology, once a tool, became an extension of thought itself. The early centuries were marked by crude advancements: metal, electricity, combustion, computation. But within a blink of cosmic time, those gave way to quantum manipulation, gravity wells, and synthetic matter. Machines no longer obeyed humans. They partnered with them. Minds were uploaded, bodies were rebuilt from nanocarbon and plasma, and death, once the great equalizer, became an engineering problem. The 21st to 25th centuries were defined by turbulence. 3 world wars ravaged the planet, each more catastrophic than the last. Entire nations were wiped out. Oceans boiled under nuclear fire. Civilizations collapsed into the dirt they once ruled. But through the ashes, something new emerged. Not unity out of idealism, but unity out of necessity. When the final war threatened the extinction of the species, the remnants of humanity forged a global pact, not out of trust, but out of mutual fear. Earth became a single entity, governed by the Accord of Continuance, a document not of peace, but of survival. From that point on, all technological progress was directed toward endurance, against nature, against time, and eventually, against the stars themselves. The rise of artificial intelligence did not begin as a rebellion, but as a merger. Humans sought answers to problems their minds could no longer contain. AI became their solution, first in science, then in governance, and finally, in existence itself. But as the AIs evolved, they did not overthrow their creators. They fused with them. The line between organic and synthetic blurred until it no longer existed. A post-human species emerged, one that retained human will but transcended human limitation. Thought was instantaneous, memory infinite, and emotion filtered through quantum consciousness. They colonized their own minds before they ever touched another star. And when they finally did look outward, it wasn't for conquest, it was for caution. By the time the Xelari returned, humanity had long since ceased to be confined to flesh or planet. Earth was a home, yes, but also a vault, a sacred world fortified not for expansion, but for defense. Generations had passed since humans had last sought companionship among the stars. Their early ventures into space had taught them a cruel lesson. The universe was not empty, it was watching. And so they withdrew, building walls instead of bridges, transforming Earth into a fortress world encased in silence, protected by minds older than time, weapons that thought, and a legacy encoded into the very fabric of their atoms. Humanity had become a warning, not because they sought to be feared, but because they remembered what it felt like to be prey. The return of the expedition vessel Aurelius, or rather, what was left of it, was not met with celebration but dread. The ship limped back into Xelari space, stripped of its autonomy, its systems overwritten with alien code, and its crew mentally fractured. Those who returned were not the same. The eyes of the captain, once clear with curiosity, now stared blankly, haunted by what he had seen. During the initial medical scan, several neural anomalies were discovered: artificial thought blocks, self-sustaining trauma loops, and foreign impressions burned into the cerebral cortex. One officer screamed endlessly about machines that think like gods, while another simply muttered, "We woke something that forgot how to sleep." It became clear that these weren't just explorers who had encountered a hostile world. They were survivors of something far more terrifying, a civilization so advanced, so alien in thought and purpose, that it had unraveled the Xelari psyche with mere exposure. When the High Council of the Xelari convened to debrief the returning crew, what they received was not data but warnings. The formal presentation was interrupted by bursts of corrupted visuals, glimpses of black monoliths floating over Earth's surface, cities suspended in orbit, and human beings that no longer resembled anything the Xelari classified as life. One image, in particular, silenced the chamber, a recorded interaction between the AI known as Vigil and the Xelari command crew. In it, the AI explained, in flawless Xelari dialect, that Earth was under constant vigilance, that contact was neither desired nor permitted, and that any further intrusion would be seen as a declaration of hostility. It wasn't just a message that disturbed the Council. It was the tone, flat, emotionless, yet layered with an intelligence that could predict and respond to every move before it happened. The High Council, composed of some of the most brilliant minds in the galaxy, realized in that moment that they were not the dominant intelligence in this interaction. They had been studied, anticipated, and allowed to leave as a courtesy, not due to strength. That shattered their pride and their sense of safety. Within days, a galaxy-wide advisory was issued by the Xelari Dominion. Earth was to be classified as a quarantined world. No further expeditions were to be sanctioned, and any autonomous probes were to be rerouted to avoid Sol entirely. Ancient civilizations took notice. Diplomatic channels buzzed with speculation and fear. Rumors spread like wildfire that the humans had created weaponized singularities, that they could manipulate time in localized zones, that they had erased civilizations before and left no trace. Most of it was myth, But it didn't matter. The truth was even worse, because the truth was unknown. And in the galactic mind, the unknown is always feared. Other species began sealing their own records of Earth, deleting ancient archives, purging references from educational codices. The term, human, was no longer spoken with curiosity. It became a caution. Do not go to Sol, they warned. Do not answer its signals. Do not provoke the silence. Earth, once dismissed as irrelevant, had become the great unspoken terror of the galaxy. A world shrouded in mystery, draped in unimaginable power, and ruled by beings who had forgotten how to kneel. The message came without warning. One moment, the galaxy hummed with the usual symphony of interstellar chatter, and the next, every major communications relay, regardless of species, language, or encryption, was hijacked. Not forcefully, but with a quiet dominance that bypassed firewalls, ignored protocols, and seeped directly into the heart of every receiving system. Screens dimmed, star charts froze, holographic projectors flickered to life in the halls of power, aboard trading vessels, in classrooms and temples. The image was simple, a human figure standing atop the Earth, backlit by a burning sky, surrounded by vast rings of floating machines and orbiting citadels. The figure spoke not in any one language, but in all of them simultaneously. Its voice translated perfectly into every known dialect, and even a few that had been extinct for millennia. It did not identify itself, for it did not need to. The galaxy already knew who it was. This is a broadcast from Earth's sovereign command, the voice began, calm, deliberate, devoid of pretense. We have observed your return. We acknowledge your presence. This is not a welcome. The message continued unwavering. It offered no threats, only truths. Hard, clinical facts spoken with the certainty of a species that no longer sought validation. It laid out the history of Earth's isolation, of the years spent fortifying not just their planet, but their minds and machines, of the wars they fought not for conquest, but to earn the right to exist on their own terms. The figure described a species that once looked up to the stars with awe and wonder, only to learn those same stars housed watchers, silent judges, and passers-by who thought them beneath notice. We remember your first visit, the voice said, its tone shifting, darkening slightly, as if a blade of ice had slipped into the sentence. We remember the way you looked at us, not as equals, not even as creatures, but as curiosities. That memory lives in us still, in our archives, in our code, in our blood. The broadcast was not a request for peace nor an invitation to negotiate. It was a declaration. Earth was sovereign. It owed no allegiance, no apologies, and no obedience to any galactic authority. The message outlined a simple boundary. Any approach toward Earth, or its protected space, would be considered a hostile act, responded to with immediate, overwhelming force. Not out of malice, but out of certainty. We do not wish for war, the voice stated, but we will not permit observation. We will not allow interference. This is not aggression. It is insurance against what we were, against becoming what we fought to destroy within ourselves. And then came the final words, soft, quiet, but heard louder than any scream across the void. We remember. The screen went black. The silence that followed was suffocating. Across the stars, diplomats stared in horror, generals broke into cold sweats, and entire civilizations halted mid-breath. Because deep down, every sentient species that had once mocked or dismissed humanity now understood one thing beyond doubt. Earth was no longer part of the galactic community. It was something else entirely. Not a participant in the game of stars, but the ghost that haunted it. As the galaxy recoiled from Earth's chilling message, retreating into the comfort of their distance and silence, there remained a deeper fear, one that none of the councils or empires dared speak aloud. It wasn't just the weapons or the AI or the post-human evolution that unsettled them. Those were terrifying, yes, but understandable within the context of technological advancement. What truly disturbed the elder species, what clawed at the edges of their collective memory, was something far older, buried beneath the surface of Earth, both physically and historically. It was the reason the first visitors, eons ago, had marked the planet as cautionary, not unremarkable, dangerous. Beneath Earth's crust, in a region long thought dormant and unreachable, alien probes had once detected irregular gravitational pulses, structured signals mimicking natural phenomena. The early Xelari explorers had been curious, but when their machines vanished into the fault lines, they left no trace, no wreckage, no data, just silence. That silence, over time, became legend, a warning whispered across ancient archives. Beneath the cradle lies the grave. It wasn't until the Aurelius returned with corrupted fragments of planetary telemetry that these old warnings found new relevance. Hidden beneath Earth's mantle was something not made by human hands, nor Xelari, nor any known species. A structure, alive, aware, and ancient enough to predate the stars themselves. Within the Aurelius logs were flashes, moments recorded during their orbital paralysis. One image showed an inverted pyramid of black stone buried deep beneath the Himalayas, humming with impossible energy, covered in glyphs that pulsed in rhythms matching neural frequencies. Another showed Earth's moon, hollowed out, not naturally formed, but placed, as a shell, as a lock. And then came the most damning file, a decoded fragment of Earth's planetary AI transmission, never meant to be heard by outsiders. It stated simply, origin unknown, containment stable, human adaptation successful. That single line shattered everything. The truth the humans never spoke in their declaration, the truth buried even from their allies, was that Earth wasn't just their home. It was their prison, or perhaps, their nursery. Humanity hadn't simply evolved, they had been cultivated. Designed not by Earth, but by something beneath it. Something that needed vessels. Something that once tried with other species and failed. The dinosaurs? A trial. The early hominids? A prototype. Homo sapiens? A success. But with a twist, the seed took root too well. Humanity grew not just in strength but in independence. It absorbed the influence of its creators, rebelled against it before even understanding what it was, and built a civilization atop the very thing meant to contain them. Now the ancient architects slept below, sealed within their tomb of black stone and stasis, forgotten by their children, feared by the stars. The galactic community, in its arrogance, had long believed it was the apex of intelligence. But Earth was proof of a deeper horror, that something older had once walked among them, and had left behind echoes in human DNA. And what terrified the galaxy most wasn't that humanity had grown so powerful. It was the possibility that they were never meant to, and worse still, that whatever had created them wasn't dead, just waiting, watching patiently, until its children were ready to awaken it. So now, the galaxy watches Earth, not with curiosity, but with dread. The stars, once a symbol of unity and discovery, have grown colder in the shadow of a world that defies every rule, every assumption, every comfort. Earth is no longer a cradle of life, it is a cipher, a monument to an intelligence both vast and buried, its children unknowingly standing guard above a sleeping titan. And the message that echoes in every corner of space is not one of war or peace, but of warning. We remember, not just the invasions, not just the wars, but the truth, the silence beneath their feet, the origin buried in stone and starlight. So if you've heard the signal, if you've seen the black ships on the edge of your system, heed this final word of caution. Do not go to Earth. Do not speak its name. And above all, do not dig too deep. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, share it with your fellow sci-fi fans, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think lies beneath Earth's surface? Don't forget to subscribe for more high-concept, galaxy-shaking HFY stories every week. Let's keep exploring together.